right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started now just because, we want to respect your time. I know you all took some time to be here this morning, and I really appreciate you all taking the time to want to be here with us today. So we're going to talk about some really fun and important stuff today because today is the launch of Red Ribbon Week. So this year, the theme that we decided to go with here at County Schools, at least within our program, is choose to refuse, right? And the reason why is just because now that we know a lot more about the health impacts with regards to tobacco, vaping, even marijuana use, we know that it's actually something that we know it's bad for us. So that's something that we're really pushing to you as students and really encouraging you all to, again, choose to refuse, because we know this doesn't do you any good. And I'm going to hopefully share some things with you today that will convince you of that. But again, what I'm here today to do is not tell you what you should and shouldn't do, but really my goal here is to have a conversation with you all and really hope that I can plant some seeds and really get you all to think for yourselves and really decipher for yourself what I'm telling you. So I'm not sure if many of you can. From the looks of it, it looks like you guys are classrooms, so I don't think you'll be able to participate. But if you can, that would be great. I'll go ahead and give you opportunities to jump in and ask questions as we go along. Because again, I want this to be more of a conversation. I don't want this to be me talking to you. I really want to talk with you. Because again, as we're working with more and more students across the county to address this very important issue, we know that we want the students to be part of the solution. So so let's continue. And I apologize for the lights that just went off behind me. I do have this one light in front of me. So if you see me, it's just a sensor back here. So I apologize for that in advance. So let's just go ahead and quickly get started, right? I'm going to just show this quick about 1 minute video just to kind of give you a little bit of a background as to what Red Ribbon Week is and why is it that we celebrate it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play this video and we'll kind of continue on right after.
We asked middle and high school students what they think about when they hear the words Red Ribbon Week.
Staying away from drugs.
Red ribbons displayed all over school.
Making healthy choices for our future.
That is true now, but do you know the history of Red Ribbon? In 1985, a DEA agent named Kiki Camarena was kidnapped, tortured, and killed in Mexico, working to prevent drug dealers from bringing drugs into the United States. After his funeral, his friends and family began wearing red ribbons as a way of showing their love of Kiki and their respect for his hard work to keep kids safe, healthy, and drug-free. That led to Red Ribbon campaign celebrations across the country and eventually a National Red Ribbon Week in 1988. Red Ribbon Week should be educational and fun, but we can't forget to take a moment to honor the memory of DEA agent Kiki Camarena and his family.
Thank you, Agent Camarena.
We appreciate you, Camarena family.
Thanks for your sacrifice, Kiki Camarena.
So that's the little bit of a background as to why we celebrate Red Ribbon Week, right? So the whole story behind this is that, as it was mentioned in the video, is that basically a DEA agent was working in Mexico and was killed trying to prevent from allowing drugs to be entering into our country. And so that's one of the reasons why we really celebrate this, is because we do know with Red Ribbon Week, it's an opportunity for us to really not just remember what he sacrificed, but also really create this movement to really push everybody, not just our students, but really everybody, right? Everybody to be drug free. And we all know why, right? We know that drugs are not good. And we're going to kind of get into it here today, but I'm going to just let you know ahead of time, we're going to focus on 3 drugs that we know more about. And that really is tobacco, we're talking about vaping, and we're going to talk about marijuana. So I know that those are 3 big issues that I know that we're seeing with a lot of students, and actually a lot of students that we've worked with are saying that is something that they're noticing in their schools. So again, I hope that this can be a conversation. So if you all are interested, if you're allowed to speak up, feel free to speak up. You want to raise your hand, however that may be. Like I said, it looks like you're all in classroom settings, so I'm not sure how easy that will be, but if you're allowed, feel free to raise your hand. And if you want to quickly try to get whoever has control of the computer to unmute themselves, and if you can speak up, let's go ahead and do that. So let's just start off with a little bit of a background, right? So let's talk about what are some common beliefs when it comes to cigarettes, vaping, and cannabis, right? So there's a couple of things that we know, and these are, again, this is just common beliefs based off of discussions we've had. We know, number one, when we talk about cigarettes, we know that they're bad. We know that there's lots of data to show that they cause lung cancer. We know that they're addictive and they're unpopular. Why are they unpopular? Well, first of all, we know that they stink. No one likes the smell of them, right? So we know after years of work, we know that this is something that's become very, very unpopular, especially with kids or students around your age. And the reason being is because there has been tons and tons of work that has been taking place in schools for many years. I mean, longer than I've been around myself. So just so you know that's why we've been able to make such progress when it comes to cigarettes. You all know that it's bad. But when we talk about vaping, we get a whole different wide array of answers as to what the beliefs are, right? We hear that, oh well, it's only water vapor, it's safer than cigarettes, right? And it helps us quit with smoking. As we go through this presentation, I'm hoping that I can clear some of these misconceptions up, because that's really what they are. These are not truths, right? We want to let you know that they are, that they're not safer than traditional cigarettes. There's not enough research to show that they're safer, right? And I really want you to walk away with safer doesn't mean safe, right? So let's just go with that. And then also, when we're talking about, we hear all the time that it's just water vapor. One of the things I want to let you know is that it's actually not water vapor. What we've been able to find out, what you're actually inhaling and exhaling out, is not water vapor, but it's actually aerosol. And here's an opportunity for someone to speak up if you can, if it's allowed. Does anyone know what an aerosol is? Just by the raise of hands. I can kind of see you guys in your classrooms, but by a raise of hands, does anyone know what an aerosol is? Anyone? Don't be shy. I see one hand. All right, that's great. So an aerosol is essentially, how many of you know what Lysol is? We all spray Lysol, right? We all know that, right? I see some hands going up. Great. That's what an aerosol is. So, right? So when we're spraying Lysol, when you're spraying it, sometimes you spray it in the air, sometimes you're spraying it on surfaces. What is it that you feel when you spray it up, right? We feel water droplets come down or something that drops on our heads, right? Well, if it was water vapor, when we're thinking of water vapor, think of when you're boiling water and you open the lid of whatever it is that you're boiling and put your face in there, kind of get this like plume of like moisture that comes out and then just evaporates. That's water vapor. But what you're actually getting when you're inhaling and exhaling those the chemicals that are found in e-cigarettes is actually aerosol. So it's kind of like the equivalent to like the same type of droplets that you would be getting from Lysol. And let's talk about cannabis, right? So what are some common beliefs about cannabis or marijuana? We hear a lot that, hey, it's medicinal. Some folks say it's a gateway drug. Some folks say it's not harmful. Some folks say it's natural, right? So I'm hoping that as we get through this presentation, we're going to kind of get into a little bit more of some of these things, right? So let's start off with some quick facts here, right? Let's just kind of talk about it. So did you all know that 90% of current smokers, now I'm talking about people who smoke today, 90% of them started before they were 18 years old, right? And the reason why that is important to know is because the tobacco industry, right? When we're talking about industry, something like we're talking about these people who mass produce tobacco products. And when I'm talking about tobacco products, let's just say tobacco and vaping products, because they're one and the same. And I'll kind of get into that in just a sec. 90% of current smokers started before they were 18, right? And we know this because we know from history that the tobacco industry has targeted young people. And that the reason why is because they know that cigarettes are addictive. They know that tobacco products are addictive, and it has a lot to do with your brain. And the tobacco industry knows this, right? And I'll tell you another thing that I also want to clear up is that I know people say like, oh, well, vaping is better than smoking a cigarette, or that's different. Well, did you know that the tobacco industry actually makes the most popular and widely used vape products? And the tobacco industry has actually just recently said that in a couple of years, they plan to completely eliminate traditional tobacco products. They want to just focus on vaping products. Why is that? Because they know a lot of young people will not use cigarettes, but they would much rather use vapes. So just kind of let that sink in for a sec. 80% of teens who vape are using flavors, right? Again, when we're talking about flavored tobacco products, this is the big issue. This is why we're seeing such a problem when it comes to youth vaping, right? And I'll just put a little things into some things into perspective, right? Prior to COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic, which probably feels like a long time ago, right? I know we're in the midst of it, but like let's just say the before, right? The big thing that we were trying to tackle nationwide was what they called the youth vaping epidemic. And the reason being is because of, sure, there's lots of cool products that were out in the market. And then also we're talking about flavors, right? Because the tobacco industry knows y'all don't like cigarettes. Y'all don't like the smell, don't like the taste, but they know that you like other things, right? And then 30% of teens who have tried cannabis or marijuana they've tried it. 30% of them have tried it by the 12th grade. Now, I know that you're all saying like, oh well, cannabis, it's medicine, it's natural. Well, we'll kind of get into why that's not the case, right? I'm going to tell you right now that there is absolutely, I mean, there's a lot of science taking place to check regarding the medicinal value, but right now they're not finding any medicinal value in terms of when it comes to marijuana with the THC, right? People smoke marijuana because of THC, not because of the CBD. Now they're starting to find research that shows that CBD has right? Some medicinal value, but the THC has none. And that's primarily the reason why people are smoking marijuana. But we'll kind of get into that. So why is this important? Why are events like Red Ribbon Week important? Why is it important that you're here today? And why is it such a good thing? Well, that's because so much work has been taking place in schools for to address students' use of e-cigarettes. Just in 2019, we had close to 30% of high school students using e-cigarettes. That's an insane number. 30% is a big, big chunk, right? When you're thinking of what is 30%, let's just say your classroom is 20 students, 30 students, for example, right? When you're talking about that, you're looking at about 10%, about 10 students, or I'm sorry, 30, you're looking at 9 students in a 30 kid classroom that are currently using e-cigarettes. That's a big, big number, right? But as we've been doing more work, we've noticed that's actually been going down, and this is nationwide. But let's look at California, but more specifically in our community. What does that look like in our community? Well, we're really excited to say that number actually here in our communities is actually much, much lower. And this is actually from data that we collected from high school students all across San Bernardino County, right? So let's just look at this. Look at these numbers. Currently, 10% of students are currently using a tobacco product, right? Now that means that includes cigarettes, that includes vapes, that includes, your smokeless stuff. 10%. Now you might be like, oh, well, 10% is really not that bad. But again, let's put things into perspective. If you have a graduating class of like 300 to 500 students, you're looking at close to 30 to 50 students in that graduating class that are current users of tobacco products. And of those 10%, almost 9%. So most of them are using vapes. That's a big issue, because again, we're going to get into why we're seeing that as an issue. So why has vaping become such a problem? Why has it become such a popular thing with youth? Well, we've seen that vapes have evolved over the years. I'm not sure if many of you even recognize some of these older vapes, but as the youth have evolved into what they like, so is the tobacco industry, right? And when I say the tobacco industry, I'm really looking at like products like Juul. How many of you, by raise of hands, know what Juul is? I see a couple of hands. All right. Yeah. So Juul is actually made and manufactured by one of the largest tobacco manufacturers, right? So if you're thinking, well, it's safer, well, why is it that the tobacco industry is getting their hand in it, right? It's not because they want to make a safer product. It's because they know that youth are not using traditional cigarettes, right? They know that you guys ain't, because it smells, it doesn't taste good, whatever. Most students or most youth are not using that. So what are they doing? They're turning to other things that look and appear healthier, right? Just because, again, it doesn't smell. It tastes like fruit. It tastes like whatever. So that's why. Another issue as to why we've seen this explode even more is because vapes have become now more concealable, right? We've learned that again, that when youth are wanting to use these products, they don't want to be caught. That's the number one thing, right? They don't want anyone to know that they're doing this. So what are they doing? They're making these products a lot smaller. And when we're talking about products like Juul, they actually started something. They started a new type of product, right? When I'm talking about the e-cigarettes or the vapes, Juul has started what's called a pod-based system, and that pod-based system is essentially that it's disposable, or it's you could pop a cartridge off and pop one back in, and there you go. That has become such a big problem, and we're starting to see so many products like that. So how many of you can recognize some of these products? Just by raising hands, how many of you recognize some of these? Right? And I'm talking about like Puff Bar. How many of you know what a Puff Bar is? Right? Okay. Puff Bar now is the number one product used by students, or not students, just youth in general. And the reason why is because again, what we've learned is that once they caught on to that, what adults know what Juul is, they found something else. But in addition to that, Puff Bar got ahead of the game when the FDA started cracking down on Juul and saying, "Hey, you guys can't make flavors anymore." What did Puff Bar do? They just said, "Oh, wait a minute, that doesn't apply to disposable products." Well, guess what? We're a disposable product, and we're gonna push these products out. That started again the pod-based system, and we're starting to see other products such as the ones that are circled here, right? These are the products that we see that are most popular among students, and this is a huge problem, right? When you see these vapes, you're like, oh, it's just water vapor, it's flavoring, it's not that bad, right? Well, we're going to kind of get into that. So just by so I guess I can't really ask this question because from the looks of it, I can't really have anyone answer. But the reason why vaping has become such a problem is because of the flavors, right? The flavor availability. Once flavors became a thing, we've started to see that youth are starting to gravitate towards that. And just to put something in a perspective for you all, there are about 15,500 flavors on the market today. Let's just think about that for a second. 15,500 flavors. Why is it that you think that they have 15,500 flavors? The reason being is because they know youth don't like traditional cigarettes. But what is it that they know that they like? They know they like candy. They know that they like certain fruits. They like, Hawaiian punch. They like cereal. And then they're getting obscure names such as like the ones you see here, like booger sugar or banana butt. I've actually seen one that was called unicorn poop. That okay, like to me as an adult, I'm gonna tell you right now, I have no desire to taste any sort of poop in general. So I can only imagine what a unicorn poop would taste like. But things like this to youth are attractive. Why? Because it sounds funny, right? When I was younger, when I was your age, sure, if I would have heard unicorn poop, I would have been like, hey, that sounds funny. I'm gonna try that because that sounds funny. It's fun, right? And the tobacco industry knows this. They know what you like. All right. So why is this a problem? So why is the flavoring such a big problem? Well, because it tastes good. It masks a lot of the chemicals that are going into your system, right? So and not only that, these products contain a heck of a lot more nicotine than your traditional stuff, right? So let's just compare it to a pack of cigarettes, right? One pack of cigarettes is the equivalent to 20 milligrams of nicotine. That means that every cigarette has about 1 milligram of nicotine. One Juul pod, for example, contains the equivalent to 41 cigarettes. So one Juul pod has the same amount of nicotine as over 41 cigarettes, right? That's huge. So let's just take a step back. When I was your age, e-cigarettes didn't exist. For me, it was all cigarettes. When I heard of people like saying, "Oh, they smoke a pack a day," I used to be like, "Man, how are you still alive? How the heck are you still breathing?" Right? Because we knew a pack a day was a ton. But when we're talking about Juul, we've learned, and this is from what we've learned from students themselves, this is what they've told us through focus groups. They don't just use one Juul pod, right? They're sharing Juul pods with their friends and hammering out like 2 or 3 of these a day. So between friends, you're taking in the equivalent to two, like almost like what, 4 6 packs of cigarettes in a day. Now, when we're talking about Puff Bar, that gets even more insane. Why? Because that's the equivalent to just over 50 cigarettes in one Puff Bar. right? And again, the why are we so concerned with this is because puff bars, we're learning that students are not just using one, they're using multiple a day. And why is puff bar, like, why is that the new thing? Why is that the one that we're really concerned with right now? Why? Because they created a different type of nicotine. They made it out of what's called a salt-based nicotine. What is a salt-based nicotine? Well, that allows the nicotine to deeper penetrate your lungs, which allows the nicotine to more effectively get into your bloodstream, which again allows for it to become much, for you to be much easily addicted, right? What's the goal of the tobacco industry? What is it that they want? They want money, right? And they know that their current customers are dying, so they need new ones. And why is it that what is it that they're doing? Who are they trying to target for their new customers? They're trying to go after people your age. Why? Because remember that statistic I shared with you? 90% of current smokers started before 18. The tobacco industry knows this. They're going after you because they know if they can lock you down now, they are going to have a customer for your life, not life, your life. Because what we know is that smokers tend to live a much shorter life. Okay. And then now when we're talking about marijuana too, right? I know a lot of people say like, oh, it's, it's not as bad, like, oh, my grandpa or my dad or my uncle, they smoked it and they're fine, so it's going to be fine. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the marijuana from like the hippies days, the THC content in whatever they smoked was like 1 to 2%. 1 to 2% THC in a joint, right? The stuff that they're putting on the market today, it can be anywhere from 30 to like 90% THC. So that is much harder than what people were smoking back in the day, right? And then also the process to get marijuana into these types of products that you see on the screen, the chemicals that they're using, look at you when we're talking about extracting this, they're using butane. It's like you putting your mouth over a muffler and just ripping that muffler, right? Because that's the kind of heat that it takes to be able to extract that THC oil out of the plant, right? And I hear this all the time, like, hey, well, marijuana is it's natural, so it's not bad. Well, did you guys all know that tobacco is also natural, right? Tobacco is a natural plant and it naturally has nicotine in it, just like it has like THC is in the marijuana plant. So again, so when people are trying to tell you like, oh, it's okay, it's medicine, it's natural, don't worry, it's organic. It's really not, because all the chemicals that it takes to just keep that marijuana plant alive, you have no idea how many chemicals and the pesticides you're taking in. Because remember, in order for those marijuana plants to actually grow, there's tons of pesticides that need to be used to allow it to grow. Right. And so again, remember, to be able to get that into this form takes a much more intense process. So that's another thing that we want you all to learn about too. So I kind of also want to share a couple of things with you. So here's some facts or myths about cannabis or marijuana is, yes, we know that you cannot die from an overdose on cannabis. Chances are you'll smoke yourself and you'll fall asleep. But there are other things that you can get, right? The things that you might not be aware of is when you're smoking marijuana, it's very similar to smoking a cigarette in the sense that when that thing combusts, you're getting carbon monoxide inside of your lungs, which can also cause cancer. So yeah, you may not be able to die from an overdose, but you can still get cancer from smoking joints or even smoking these things, because you're smoking it in the same exact way that you did from a cigarette, right? And then, as I mentioned, the strength of marijuana has changed in the last 50 years, right? Like I told you, this ain't your grandpa's marijuana anymore. This is much different. This is much harder than what they were having. And we'll get into that in a bit. And as much as you might not want to believe me, and I could see you, my friend, the one that's shaking his head, cannabis is addictive. As much as you may not want to believe it, it really, really is addictive. And the reason why is because we know how it locks into the same cells as in your brain, right? So again, so we know that it's addictive, and we know this through science, and we'll kind of get into that. Okay. Cannabis can also rewire a young person's brain. And I'll kind of show you as to what I mean by that. And I'm not saying that it's going to rewire your brain as in that your brain's going to turn into mush or any of that. No, it's not that, but we're going to kind of get into what that looks like. So here are some myths, right? I want to throw that out. Cannabis is not medicine. Okay, it's not. It as it is right now. We don't know. Now, again, like I mentioned, CBD. On the other hand, what we do know is there is some research to show that yeah, maybe there is some medicinal value there. But what we're seeing for the reason why people are actually using marijuana is not for the CBD, but for the THC, right? And then another myth that we're seeing is that vaping cannabis is safe. We know that vaping in general is not. So vaping cannabis is no different. And then also when we're talking about edibles, right? It's not easy to determine the strength in food items with marijuana in them because again, none of this stuff is regulated. There is no real recipe to it. So it's not like an exact science. What we're seeing is we're actually seeing just people just throw random stuff, random amounts in this platter of whatever it is that they're making for you. And you might get an edible that's very weak. Great. You might get one that's weak. You might get one that hits you really, really hard. So that again, we never really know. They can label it as much as they want, but we never really know. So let's just kind of like talk about real quickly what it does to the lungs, right? We know that vaping, smoking in any form of any product, we know that it irritates the airways for your lungs. We know that it affects your ability to breathe. We also know that it destroys the air sacs in your lungs. So those air sacs are what allows you to be able to take in all that oxygen and for that oxygen to be distributed throughout the body, right? So we know that it does that. And then by you destroying these little air sacs in your lungs, you're going to start getting diseases such as popcorn lung, right? And then also what we also know is that it creates a weaker immune response to infection. And when we're talking about things like COVID, right, we know that COVID is a big thing right now. We know that people are easily infected with COVID. The weaker your immune system, the more prone you are to catch that. And smoking in any way actually increases that likelihood. We also know that it impairs the blood vessel function. So how the blood goes through your body, right? We know that it could form blood clots, right? We know that it's not going to allow your body to properly transport blood to all the areas of the body that it needs. So again, and then the big reason why I mentioned blood clots is because blood clots are the reasons why we have heart attacks, why we have strokes, right? Those are the reasons. And the more you smoke or vape, is you're increasing that risk for these blood clots. So I mentioned to you about cannabis, right? I told you guys that marijuana can really affect your brain being young. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Science shows that between ages 21 and 25, the addictive how there's a much less likelihood of you being addicted to marijuana if you started between the ages of 21 and 25. That's what the science says, and I'm not going to hide that. But what we're seeing is that I see some guys raise his hand. You want to ask a question? I can't hear you, so I don't know if you want to ask a quick question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go for it.
But isn't marijuana medical because it helps with pain and it helps people with autism?
Okay, yeah. So those are good questions. So yeah, so that's why I was mentioning. So yeah,
sleep,
so
by the way.
I'm sorry. Go for it.
And insomnia.
And insomnia. Okay, yeah. So let me answer insomnia. Insomnia, technically no, because what we're learning is that it actually does the opposite. So yeah, you may fall asleep from getting too high, but you're not getting good sleep. I'm gonna be honest with you. You're not getting the sleep that you need. It's not the sleep that your brain requires to be able to repair itself and get you ready for the next day.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about, you mentioned the other things like, right, like it's medicinal, like you were saying for pain and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're talking about that, that's why I mentioned CBD, right? Again, I'm not encouraging the use of any of these products because again, none of these have been approved by the FDA, which is those are the guys who research everything, right? And they're the ones who say, yeah, this is safe, this is not. What they're finding is that CBD does have medicinal value that can help with like pain, for example.
Yeah.
There's actually research that's saying, yeah, CBD is useful.
I have a question. When kids are overdosing on painkillers, pills, narcotics, whatever, Xanax, do you think they rather have? Do you think it's better for them to smoke marijuana, use marijuana, or be on pills and possibly die from an overdose?
That's actually a good question. And my answer to that is I would follow whatever your doctor says. So if you're getting painkillers, follow what your doctor says. They know what they're saying.
I mean,
But when
I
we're
mean,
talking, go ahead.
for example, I go to the doctor because of my liver.
Uh-huh.
I used to take hydrocodone for my
Okay.
pain, and it was a narcotic, and my liver, I have a lot of liver pain.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just feel like instead of bringing up tobacco and vaping and all this stuff, yeah, it's gonna kill you. That's their choice. They want to die because obviously they're smoking cigarettes. If they were smart, they would smoke a plant, something that came out of the ground, And I understand that they put chemicals, but some of them don't use that kind of chemicals that strong, or whatever.
Yeah, I hear you, right? So again, like I mentioned, you know what else is natural? Not nicotine, tobacco is a plant. It's natural, right? And
Yeah,
then
but
like
that's
and
straight to the lungs. That's tobacco. It's gonna kill you, of course. It's a tree. But marijuana, I think it's more of a it's more medical. I mean, it depends how you use it. If you roll a joint or a tobacco cigarette or what.
no, I think I lost you there. But yeah, so I'll just kind of just to quickly answer your question, just so that way I won't hold everyone else up. But yeah, again, when you're talking about marijuana or tobacco not being a natural plant or whatever it is, same thing with marijuana. You got to remember, like you also mentioned marijuana that not all use whatever chemicals, right? But we don't know who does and who doesn't. That's the big thing, is that yeah, marijuana is technically legalized for those who are 21 and over, but what we know is that again, that I guess I'm trying to find the right way to say this, right? So what we do know is that not all growers do it in the same way, right? And so you just never know what you're going to get, and it's just proven that we know that marijuana, there is a process to grow that plant, and the chemicals needed to grow that plant are going to be within that. And then at the end of the day, really just the end of the day, what we're trying to just share with everybody is tobacco and marijuana, just plain and simple, for anyone under 21 is just illegal. That's the big thing. For us, our concern, again, it's my goal here today is not really to tell you what you should and shouldn't do, really, but just to help you try to make a decision for yourself, because ultimately it's your decision. But what we try to do is educate you on what we know based off of the science that we've learned, right? My job every day is to really just research and learn. This is what I do for a living. This is what I do from 8 to 4 every day, is just learn what's the latest and the latest data, the latest information that we're learning. And again, that's what my goal is for here today. So again, take that with what you will. But at the end of the day, what I want you to take away from this is, hey, look, these are the potential harms to using any of these products that I'm sharing with you today. And just understanding that, hey, if you're under 21, you shouldn't be using it.